Welcome back. For today's video, going to be taking a look at 5 brand new polls that have come out over the past couple of days. 2 of them are taking a look at the national picture of the 2020 Democratic primary, and then 3 are from early states, 2 specifically from Iowa, as well as 1 from New Hampshire, and some really interesting data to go through. If you're interested in looking at all of these statistics and polling data for yourself, I'll have links to all these articles down at the bottom of the video description as always. So starting off here, this week's morning consult, we continue to see Joe Biden leading the pack at 32%. And then there's a little bit of a gap there between first place and those 2 candidates who find themselves nearly tied for second. But actually, this is the first morning consult poll that we've gotten in well over a month where Bernie Sanders actually is in second place by himself at 20%, followed by Elizabeth Warren at 19%. Pete Buttigieg, he's kind of slowly but surely been creeping his way up into the upper single digits, in fourth place at 8%. Kamala Harris at 5%, Cory Booker and Andrew Yang each at 3 percentage points, and then Michael Bloomberg and Amy Klobuchar each at 2 percentage points, respectively. And we take a look at those early primary states. Joe Biden actually falls back a little bit here down to 29%, a little bit different from his national numbers, and you have to figure a lot of that is being propped up by a state like South Carolina, where Joe Biden figures to do quite well, and then he's followed by Sanders and Warren, who are mirroring their national numbers at 20 and 19 percentage points. And then not a big surprise to see Buttigieg doing a little bit better than his national numbers, because in a lot of the polls, specifically out of states like Iowa and New Hampshire, he's been polling a bit better than what his national numbers might indicate. So in those early primary states, he's at 11%, and then Tom Steyer at 7%, which is a big-time outlier. He's funneling in millions of dollars into these early states to try to poll well and get onto the debate stage. And based on the numbers that we're seeing out of the morning consult, that strategy is somewhat effective for him there, and fifth place at 7%. And then you have Kamala Harris at 4%, Andrew Yang at 3%, Cory Booker and Tulsi Gabbard each at 2 percentage points. And as we can see these trend lines over time, this light purple line is Elizabeth Warren. You can see for about a little bit over a month, she was able to surpass Bernie Sanders, and then they evened up in recent weeks, and then this is the first time where Bernie Sanders actually is 1 percentage point ahead of Warren, but still very competitive between the 2 progressives, and they're really going to need some kind of catalyst or something to happen to catch down Joe Biden, at least in these morning consult numbers. Now, we see other polls that tell us a different story, but pretty much since the start of this thing, Joe Biden has had a lead over the rest of the field, and he's continuing to show that here in first place at 32%. Then we can also see this little bit of a positive trend line in recent weeks from Buttigieg getting up there to 8 percentage points. And then also just kind of interesting to take a look at the net favorability of all these different candidates, and Bernie Sanders continuing to be the strongest in that area, where he has 75% favorable, which is more than any other candidate running, and then that is in comparison to 17% unfavorable. So he actually has a lower unfavorable number than both Biden and Warren, but also a higher favorable number between these Democratic primary voters in relation to his top 2 competitors of Biden and Warren as well. And it's kind of interesting to take a look at Michael Bloomberg, who's just thrown his hat in the ring recently, looking like he's going to be making a run for this. Quite a high number there in terms of unfavorable, 26 compared to 33% who are on the favorable side for Bloomberg. And then there's still a lot of people who don't have an opinion of Bloomberg. Not a big surprise to see these kind of numbers from a billionaire not necessarily resonating all that well with a lot of Democratic primary voters, but someone who does have a decent amount of name recognition, as evident by the combination of all of these numbers, where only 13% of people have never heard of him. All right, now I want to move over and take a look at this national poll out of The Economist and YouGov. And Elizabeth Warren has reclaimed the lead in this week's YouGov poll, where she's at 26% of support, followed by Biden at 23% and Bernie Sanders at 17 percentage points. So Warren up a point from where she was in last week's YouGov poll, while Biden has receded a couple of points down to 23, and then Sanders actually up 3 percentage points. He was at 14 points in the last YouGov poll, now up to 17 percentage points, and then the rest of the field is in single digits. But again, another one of these national polls where Buttigieg kind of moving his way up into the upper single digits, where he's at 9%, Kamala Harris at 5%, Andrew Yang at 4%, and then all the other candidates are at 2 percentage points or less. And going down, I want to take a look at the second choice among these individuals. So out of these primary voters, they had their second choice at Elizabeth Warren in first place at 17%, followed by Sanders at 10%, Buttigieg at 8%, and then Biden at 7 percentage points. We continue to see this trend, and we'll see this in these other polls that I'm going to finish off this video with, those early primary states, where the second choice, this is where Biden is starting to show a lot of weakness, where he's consistently in third or fourth place, where earlier on in the process, he was much higher up in terms of the possible second choice. Not the case anymore, and that could mean that if he starts losing some of that top line support, then it could really start hurting him, because he's not on the minds of nearly as many other individuals as their second choice as some of these other candidates. And we're continuing to see that trend here for Joe Biden. All right, now moving on over and taking a look at the Monmouth poll. Really positive one for Buttigieg and the centrists. We actually have two polls out of Iowa. One is much more bullish for the centrists, and the other one is a bit more bullish for the progressives. So this one is more positive on the centrists, where we see Buttigieg vaulting 14 percentage points from the prior Iowa poll from Monmouth, where he was at 8%. Now he's in first place at 22% in this one. Biden in second place at 19%. Elizabeth Warren follows him at 18 percentage points, and then Bernie Sanders at 13 percentage points. And some interesting numbers certainly coming out of these Monmouth polls, where the one back in August had Bernie Sanders only at 8 percentage points, which seems like a bit of an outlier and one that's hard to believe. Sanders gaining a bit more from where he was back in that one, but still just there at 13 percentage points, which I still feel might be a bit on the lower side, especially considering how well Sanders did in the state of Iowa, and surprisingly so to a lot of people back in 2016 in his matchup against Hillary Clinton. Taking a look at some of these other numbers, so they also asked who would be your second choice, and this is where Elizabeth Warren does the best here at 17%, followed by Buttigieg at 15%, Bernie Sanders at 12%, and then again Joe Biden in fourth place in terms of the second choice option at 10 percentage points. And those are all the numbers that I wanted to take a look at in this particular poll. Now moving over, and this one is out of the University of Iowa, taking a look again at that first caucus result that we're going to get, and the first choice, when we combine the likelihood of caucusing, we can see in first place we have Elizabeth Warren at 23%, and then in second place is Bernie Sanders at 18.1 percentage points. Joe Biden in third place at 15.3, Buttigieg in third place at 15.5, very competitive and close with Biden, who finds himself at 15.3 percentage points. And then there's quite a gap between those top four individuals and the rest of the field. And I wanted to scroll down and take a look at the second choice as well. So we can see here in terms of the second choice option, the total for second choice has Elizabeth Warren getting the most of that vote again here at 23.6%. And then we see Bernie Sanders there at 16.1 percentage points. And then Buttigieg at 11%. And Joe Biden, not a good number for him at all in terms of those second choice, where he's down there at 7.2%, which is actually worse than Kamala Harris in the state of Iowa, who's at 7.9 percentage points. So those are the numbers that I wanted to take a look at in terms of that particular Iowa poll. And now I want to wrap things up, taking a look at the state of New Hampshire. And this one's actually a little bit more positive for Biden than what we've seen in some of these other New Hampshire polls, but still relatively competitive, and a lot of people still needing to make up their mind. And now we see Biden in first place in this New Hampshire poll out of Quinnipiac at 20%. And then we see Warren in second place at 16, Buttigieg in third place at 15, and Sanders in fourth place at 14 percentage points. Another one that's kind of hard to totally buy in with, given how well Sanders did in New Hampshire back in 2016 against Clinton, and the fact that it's the neighboring state to Vermont. I would be shocked if Sanders didn't finish in first and second place out of the state of New Hampshire, but that is what this particular poll is telling us. And going down and taking a look at some of these other questions. So they asked people what was most important to them, the most important quality for who they're backing. So those who had most likely to win in 2020 went with Biden at 31%, Warren at 20%, Buttigieg at 19%, and Sanders at just 6 percentage points for that one. A good leader, actually Buttigieg leading this one at 24 percentage points, followed by Warren at 19, and then Gabbard at 14 percentage points, Biden at 10, and Sanders at 8. And then when they asked the most important quality is someone who's honest, this is where Sanders led the pack at 18, followed by Buttigieg, Biden, and Warren, who were all at very similar numbers in the mid-teens. And then asking about somebody who cares. This is where Bernie did his best at 25% of those individuals, followed by Warren at 13 and Biden at 12 percentage points. And then they asked on the most important issues for the economy. This is where Biden led the pack at 17. Healthcare, Biden and Sanders almost essentially tied there, but Biden eking it out at 22%, followed by Sanders at 21%. And then climate change is extremely competitive among the top four, where you had Warren lead the pack at 22, and then Buttigieg at 19, and Biden and Sanders each at 18 percentage points. But then we have some other really interesting numbers. So they asked, out of these, out of who you support, are you extremely excited? Are you very excited, mildly excited, or not that excited? So in terms of those voters who are extremely excited, Sanders has the clear edge here at 44% compared to Biden at 19, Warren at 21, and Buttigieg at just 12 percentage points. So having the most enthusiasm and excitement behind your candidacy is obviously a positive sign for Sanders, but he definitely isn't leading in this poll. He was in fourth place, so that's not the positive sign here for Sanders. But if you have the most committed and enthusiastic voters, then you can possibly be in a realm of reasonability or a situation where you might be able to outperform what your poll numbers are saying and be a bit more competitive. And then they also asked, who is your second choice? And again, this same trend that we've been seeing, where Warren has the most of people's second choice at 17 percentage points. And then we have Buttigieg there at 13, Sanders at 12, and Biden again in fourth place in this one at 10 percentage points of support. So those are the 5 polls that I wanted to go over in today's video, taking a look at the national polls and 3 early results from Iowa and New Hampshire. I hope you found it somewhat interesting as I continue to put up these videos where I analyze all of the latest polling data out of this 2020 Democratic primary field. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.